Our first story for today takes place within the walls of a high school, a place that is meant to be a sanctuary for learning and growth. But as the narrator discovered during his freshman year, that sense of security can be shattered in an instant. It was an otherwise typical day in my first year of high school. As I walked toward my third period class, the principal's voice suddenly came over the intercom, announcing an immediate and urgent lockdown. A wave of panic hit me as I was still a good distance from my classroom and running late, which meant the hallways were completely empty. My first instinct was to hide in the nearest bathroom, but I quickly reconsidered. The library was only a little farther down the hall, and it felt like a much safer option. This was early in the school year, so I had no idea if this was a legitimate emergency or simply a drill. However, we had not yet had any practice drills, which usually came with a warning. A deep sense of unease settled in my stomach. If I chose the bathroom, I would almost certainly be by myself. If a dangerous person was roaming the halls, the only barrier between us would be a thin stall door. I decided to risk the extra few seconds it would take to get to the library, praying the door would be unlocked and that there would be a class inside. The library door was thankfully open, but to my dismay, the room was completely empty, the silence was unnerving, and I have to admit I was terrified. I pulled out my phone and checked a weather application, hoping this was all just a precaution for a storm, but the skies were clear. I found a hiding spot behind a tall bookshelf and just sat there, waiting for the all-clear announcement that would signal the end of a drill. Suddenly I heard the sound of footsteps approaching slowly from the hallway. My heart pounded as the library door creaked open. I was shaking with fear, but I forced myself to peek through a gap between the books. A man who looked to be in his late 40s, with a deeply troubled expression, entered the room. He clearly did not belong there. He began to systematically search the area, his movements filled with a strange intensity. All the questions I had were answered in that moment. This was not a drill. This man was the reason for the lockdown. I had never seen him before, and he certainly wasn't a teacher. He was the source of the danger. Luckily, his search was brief. After a minute or two of scanning the room, he left without noticing me huddled behind the shelf. Just a few minutes later, we learned that the police had apprehended him. He was found carrying a knife and a container of pills. The story that circulated afterward was tragic. He was the father of a student at the school who had been relentlessly bullied for years. The family had filed numerous complaints with the school district, but nothing effective was ever done beyond giving the bullies verbal warnings. This only made the situation worse for his son, who had reportedly reached a breaking point. I feel a great deal of sympathy for his son, but the father's chosen path was completely wrong. A person willing to take such extreme measures is unpredictable and capable of anything. I am just so grateful that he never saw me hiding in that library that day. That experience taught me that the feeling of safety can be an illusion, and it remains the most frightening event of my life. That terrifying close call in the library is a stark reminder of how quickly a normal day can turn dangerous. Our next story also begins in a seemingly safe place, a local park after school, but it leads to an equally chilling encounter. I think it was my sophomore year of high school. I was in class when my friend Daniel texted to see if I wanted to hang out later. I agreed. After getting permission from my mom, the plan was to meet at a local park and wait for our other friend, Mark, to finish his football practice. Afterward, the three of us would walk to a restaurant in the downtown area, which was less than a mile away. Daniel and I were just passing time at the park, shooting some hoops on the basketball court to stay warm while we waited. After a little while, an older man, maybe around 30 years old, started walking in our direction. Being only 15, I immediately felt a bit uneasy about a stranger approaching us. He struck up a conversation, telling us that he used to coach a high school basketball team in a neighboring city. He asked what we were up to, and I explained we were just playing a game until our friend arrived. At first, he seemed harmless enough, joining us in shooting baskets and making a few jokes. I started to relax, thinking he was probably just a bored local dad. Not long after, Daniel's mom called. He was in some trouble for something at school and had to go home immediately. It turned out he wasn't supposed to be out with me in the first place. Once he left, the friendly atmosphere disappeared. It was just me and the man. He told me his name was Robert, which I would later learn was a lie. Almost immediately after my friend was gone, Robert's demeanor changed. He asked me a very strange question. He invited me to his house, saying he had a son my age that I would get along with, and that we could all play on his basketball hoop at home. He said he lived just a few minutes away and was parked right over there. He then pointed toward an old weathered white van. It was the classic cliche vehicle from a horror movie. In that instant, I knew with absolute certainty that something was terribly wrong. I politely declined, telling him I had to wait for my friend. He became more insistent, questioning why I couldn't just see my friend another time. He said I reminded him so much of his son, who really needed good friends like me. He then let out a strange, forced laugh and gave me a smile that sent a chill down my spine. I told him no again, but this time I started backing away. I turned and ran, screaming for help as loudly as I could. My cries attracted the attention of a family that was having a picnic nearby. The man I knew as Robert scrambled to his van and sped away before anyone could get his license plate number. That family may very well have saved my life, and I will always be thankful for their presence and quick reaction. The husband called the police, while his wife helped calm me down and get in touch with my mother. She arrived from work in a panic, and we went home after I gave the police a detailed description of the man and what had occurred. Several months later, I saw his face on the news. He had been arrested in connection with more than 5 kidnappings over a 2-year period. The report detailed horrific and gruesome crimes he committed against the boys and girls he abducted, keeping them in his basement. I think about that day all the time. The memory is a constant shadow in my life, a recurring nightmare that replays what could have happened. He is now in prison for a very long time, but it's hard to believe such profoundly sick people exist in the world. It's chilling to think how a predator can hide in plain sight. While that encounter was with a stranger, our final story deals with a different kind of unexplained and terrifying event, one that blurs the line between reality and madness. I have always been more of an observer than a participant, comfortable with my own company. While I sometimes feel lonely, I generally prefer solitude. This was especially true during my college years. I had a couple of friends, but I wasn't particularly close with anyone. One afternoon, I was eating by myself in the campus cafeteria. I was used to being alone, but on this day, I started, to feel unusually self-conscious. I tried to eat my food quickly so I could return to the peace of my dorm room. I couldn't shake the distinct feeling that I was being watched. I glanced over my shoulder and saw a guy sitting a few tables behind me, staring directly at me. I gave him a puzzled look before turning back to my food. After I finished and threw my trash away, I scanned the room one more time. There he was again, still staring. He then leaned over and whispered something to his friend, and they both shot me an angry glare. I was completely bewildered. I had never seen either of them before in my life and had no idea what their issue could be. I wondered if I had unknowingly offended them or if they were just making fun of me. Having been a target for bullies before, I tried not to let my paranoia get the best of me. I pushed the incident from my mind and headed back to my dorm. Later that night, I was lying in bed, unable to sleep. My anxiety was high, so I decided to go for a walk to get some fresh air. I found a secluded bench on the far side of campus, tucked under some trees near the entrance to a wooded trail I had never noticed before. After sitting there for a few minutes, I saw a person in the distance, standing motionless under one of the yellow-tinted campus lights. It was dark and eerie, and they just stood there staring in my direction for what felt like several minutes. Then, without warning, they started running straight at me. I stayed seated, frozen for a moment. As he got closer, I called out, asking what he wanted. I stood up and started to back away slowly, asking him to calm down. It was then that I realized it was the same guy who had been staring at me in the cafeteria. Before I could react, he grabbed me by the shirt. He hit me in the face 4 or 5 times, breaking my nose. He didn't say a single word the entire time. He just took my phone and my wallet and then ran off into the darkness. After he was gone, I pulled myself together and stumbled back to my dorm. I told my roommate what happened, and he insisted we call campus security and involve the police. I was shaken and told him I wanted to wait until morning. I did my best to describe the attacker, but my roommate had no idea who I was talking about. The next day, I reported everything to the dean. He promised to review the security camera footage from the area and get back to me. Later that day, he called me back to his office. He said he saw me on the cameras, but that there was nobody else out there with me. He even accused me of making the whole thing up. I was stunned. He showed me the video and my stomach dropped. On the screen, I was there on the bench. I stood up and appeared to be talking to someone, and then I fell to the ground. But I was completely alone in the frame the entire time. He threatened me with suspension for wasting his time. I tried to argue, but he wouldn't listen. I left his office and went back to my dorm, completely defeated. My roommate clearly thought I was insane after I told him what the dean had said. Everyone did. I had a visible black eye and a broken nose, but no one believed my story. My few friends distanced themselves, thinking I was a liar seeking attention. The strangest part is that I never saw that guy on campus ever again. No one I described him to knew who he was. It was as if he never existed. I was left with real injuries and the crushing weight of being utterly disbelieved. I've never been the same, and I still have no idea what truly happened that night.